Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Today, I want to go ahead and cover an Aubrey Gordon article. And this one's from 2019. She says, "When I speak out against fat shaming, I'm told to just lose weight." So I want to see what kind of mental gymnastics she's going to jump through. I just want to see what she says, honestly, because I feel like what she says here is probably where a lot of fat activists got their idea from. So let's see. Let's see if we can find the origins of anything. Okay. Opinion. Weight loss isn't a solution to pervasive social bias, so why do we insist it is? Okay. Interesting. What do you do? I'm at a party and this kind stranger smiles, offering me a drink. I tell him about my day job when a friend cuts in. She's being modest, she says. She's a writer. He lifts his glass in a silent toast. Right on. What do you write about? I tell him I write about the social realities of moving through the world as a fat person. He wrinkles his nose at the word, but mercifully lets it pass and asks for examples instead. I tell him about the overwhelming disparities faced by fat people, oh my gosh, I'm struggling tonight. Bias in healthcare, discrimination in hiring, not to mention sexual assault and harassment. I tell him it's an issue worth confronting, worth uprooting. He shrugs. Some of it has got to be motivating though, right? Yeah, that I will say is stupid to say because to your average fat person that's struggling with toxic ritualistic behaviors, they truly believe that they cannot lose the weight. And I think I've had to reflect a lot on myself and how I used to be because I'm trying to understand these fat acceptance activists again, because I've kind of lost touch a little bit with how I used to think sometimes. And I need people to understand that when people are struggling with these mental health issues, they truly believe they cannot lose the weight. I remember truly believing I could not lose the weight, to the extent that even now, after I've gotten past that, there are times this year where I have felt like I've been walking on water because I previously thought it was so impossible. So I think when somebody says something like that, they have to be aware that the person may not completely be living in reality. The person may truly believe that being overweight is genetic, that being overweight is something that their body is meant to be, and they may really integrate being fat as a part of their identity, which it can be very scary for some people to have an identity shift. So I think it's important to think about that perspective, and it's important for me to think about that perspective because, again, I did have it for a long time. I did. So it's like I'm trying to think about ways that I got out of it and what helped me realize it was BS. And I'm trying to really reflect on these things and try to think of what happened to me a while back when I started fighting this, within myself. Okay. Motivating, I echo back to him. I brace myself for what comes next, too tense to let myself reel at the implication that the solution to pervasive discrimination somehow lies with the person left to fend it off, as if my body were to blame for such widespread societal ills. So she's going at it from a very bizarre standpoint. Like I said, she has really, really politicized her obesity. And I guess she did that a long time ago. So to me, that is something I do not relate to. That is something I don't quite understand whatsoever. But I do understand the feeling that you cannot lose. That I do understand, and that I do remember as I reflect, But she politicized it. I always say I feel like Aubrey went in the exact opposite direction that she needed to go in. to really because it really locks her in. Does that make sense? Yeah, to make a lifestyle change. You mean weight loss? Yeah, just takes a little elbow grease, a little tenacity, and you'll be there in no time. Oh gosh. So, okay. I think if somebody is Mo and under, this is more true, for sure. I do describe it a lot, how it's very different when you're super morbidly obese. It takes a lot to get out when you're super morbidly obese. You have to focus on a lot of different things. It takes a long time. It's a battle. There's often loss and gain. Like it's a battle to get out of it. It's difficult. And this year, when I got out of super morbid obesity, it was a process that took me about a year and a half. And it was incredibly difficult. And I remember when I finally got out, I posted a video and I was like, this is the end of this battle. And then you guys were like, no, this is the beginning. And I was like, this is the end of this really, really, really difficult part. And I will say, although getting out of morbid obesity, which I'm not quite out yet, but I've made my way across, although getting through morbid obesity has been awful and fugly and terrible, and I do want to make a video about it, especially when I'm out, which I'm hoping will happen by October. That would be amazing. But getting through morbid obesity has been much more of a traditional weight loss journey. It's been very different. It's been a super, super different experience. I've seen how people can really take a lot of different paths out because it's easier. Whereas I think with super morbid obesity, it's really hard because it's like, for most people, not all, but most, like for example, if you were to tell a super morbidly obese person, just cut out carbs, it is incredibly difficult for a person to do that as a super morbidly obese person because you have virtually no energy. And so if you cut it out, you feel horrible really fast. Like oftentimes within a day, within 24 hours, you feel like death. And I used to describe, like, when I used to try to go vegan as a super morbidly obese person, I would feel a sense of impending death within 3 days because your system is so fried that those types of diets, they're a little harsher, they're a little strict, they're a little difficult sometimes for the body to do. And so when you're that big, it can be really, really, really hard. And your hunger is really, really, really intense. And people don't understand that whatsoever because people don't think there's any difference in their minds. They think, oh, it's different. It's the same. But no, like being morbidly obese, my hunger is so much less than when I was super morbidly obese. Being morbidly obese, it's so much easier to exercise than when I was super morbidly obese. Things that used to take me days to get over, my body can now get over in hours. It's massively different. When I go to the gym, I can deal with soreness and stuff, and it's fine within 2 days. It used to take me 5. 5. Think about that. 5 versus 2. The emotional effects of obesity are half as bad at super morbid, are half as bad as super morbid obesity when you are morbid. It's like something that would give me a panic attack or something that would give me a massive anxiety attack when I was super morbidly obese, that panic attack would last for hours. Hours. Now, if I have a panic, it lasts about 15 minutes. So think about the difference between 3 hours and 15 minutes. You wonder why a lot of these super morbidly obese fat activists, they cannot handle any kind of criticism, any kind of moment, a look in the store, a comment, anything. That comment can send them reeling for days and days and days and weeks and hours and hours. That is because their system is fried. Your brain is fried. Your brain is in such an intense survival state when you're super morbidly obese. I still struggle sometimes with rigid thinking, but when I was super morbidly obese, it was incredibly rigid. Like, I cannot even describe the difference. And these days, it can still be there, but it's much more typical and normal. I feel like I'm much more normal as a morbidly obese person. So I will always argue on this channel that it is different. It is very different, especially post 25, especially post 30. It's very, very different. So a lot of people think it's impossible because of how difficult it is. But I will tell you on this channel, it is possible and it will be easier, because that's another thing I constantly hear, is that it just gets harder and harder. It doesn't. It is easier when you get out of that super morbid obese category. It is easier. I can tell you that. You got to be out of it for a few months. You have to maintain being out of it like 2 or 3 months, but it gets easier after that. So I'm here to give some hope in the sea of darkness. Okay, there is some hope. But anyways, Aubrey is super morbidly obese. So when she hears this, she's like, I've already tried elbow grease. I've already tried all these diets. I've already tried to do all this stuff, and it never worked because it was incredibly difficult. I was so hungry. I was so depressed. I was so this. I was so that. Everything was extreme. Going to the gym really hurt my body, right? All these different things. Like, these are all real. These are real. And a lot of people don't understand it because they haven't been super morbidly obese, to which I say, thank God you haven't. I'm so happy you haven't. But from somebody who has been on that side of things, it really is harder. Drastically harder. Twice as hard. I remember when I got into morbid obesity, I literally was like, oh my God, I'm so mad because of how much easier it is. Because it's so much easier. So just... yeah. That's not to give shade to anybody who never got to super morbid obese. It's great that you didn't. But it is a warning to those, do not get into it. It is harder. Do not get into it. Turn it around before that. And if you're in it, I will say you can get out. You absolutely can. Okay. Anyways, I tell him that not everyone can lose weight. This is why she's saying that, because she's super morbidly obese. I tell him that not everyone can lose weight, nor does everyone want to. We'll see on that, Aubrey, I guess. Besides, I tell him, who wants to be the kind of person who treats people differently based on how they look? Look, I understand that superficiality isn't the best trait ever, but a lot of people have it. And it's one of those difficult questions where it's like, am I going to accept reality the way it is, or am I going to try to manifest a different reality? I would argue it's important to choose your battles. You know, I try to manifest a different reality where obesity is not taking over everything. That's what I try to do. I don't focus my efforts on trying to make everybody not superficial, because I just don't think that will ever happen. That has never been the case in hundreds of thousands of years of human history. It will likely never be the case. So I pick my battles, okay? But yeah, sure. In an ideal world, sure. He shrugs again, I guess, but that's just the way the world works. I wouldn't say that. I'd say, look, this is what I would say to her. I'd say, I know it's difficult, but it is possible for you to lose weight. You just got to be more strategic. You probably have to go slower. You probably have to think of it as a 3 or 4 year journey, not a 1 year journey. You need to be more realistic about what it will take to lose the weight, but you'll probably feel a lot better, and you'll really understand who you actually are, because you won't be held down by the super morbid obesity, and you'll feel a lot better in general. And you'll also be able to accomplish so many more things because your health will not be as bad. That's what I would say, to which she could be like, well, no. She probably have her excuses, but I would say nothing about how people judge somebody, how they look. It's irrelevant to the discussion, in my opinion. It's totally irrelevant, because on this channel, I do not advocate for losing weight for the approval of others. I don't. Because the approval of others is not going to keep you motivated at midnight on a Tuesday when you're by yourself. It's not. You got to have intrinsic motivation. I preach intrinsic motivation on this channel because intrinsic motivation, self-motivation will keep you going through everything, through bad events in life, through if people don't like you, through, breakups and friendship splits, through anything, through your own emotions. Intrinsic motivation will keep you going through all of it. So we focus on that. I don't make my health conditional on events or people in my life. It's not a wise decision. Okay. He shrugs again. I guess that's just the way the world works. Things can change, I offer. Just because that's how the world works now doesn't mean it has to work that way. See, this is so interesting to me because why would she say that in this case, but then accept obesity? Just because you're obese now doesn't mean you have to stay that way. But she's like, she has this idealism, but she can't have any idealism in terms of her own weight loss. It's very interesting. It's this huge, huge blind spot. A third shrug. But you know what to do, right? I mean, if it's so bad, just lose weight. I have said that before myself. But I think what it is that why I say it is because it does get exhausting for a lot of people, myself included, as I do this channel. I get a little exhausted with the constant complaining about how people are seeing you as a fat person. And it's like if your whole life is dedicated to focusing on how people see you as a fat person and you want to talk about it all the time, then it makes me think, well, it must be so horrible. Why don't you just do something about it? Because sometimes I feel like it's not genuine either. I don't think people are constantly judging you as a fat person every moment, every single day. Like I always say, there are isolated incidents that the fat person, especially one with toxic ritualistic behavior, that they ruminate upon for years and years and years. And we've seen that in a lot of fat activist articles and TikToks and these things where they talk about an event that happened like 15, 20 years ago. That was a fat phobic incident. I have fat phobic incidents too, but I told you guys I have about 3 or 4 within 10 years. Think about that. Anyways, a familiar exhaustion washes through my veins and marrow. Even small talk at a party is invaded by this dramatic oversimplification of 20 years of my life. See, this is where she tried. She tried to get out of SMO. Super morbid obesity. Dieting, appetite suppressants, anything to become thin. Instead, all those weight loss attempts had altered the functioning of my body. My metabolism slowed dramatically. It's called hypothyroidism, Aubrey. Likely through toxic ritualistic behavior. In this case, the one where you eat too much. That's what we'll say. Coded language. My metabolism slowed dramatically due to my toxic ritualistic behavior, aka hypothyroidism, aka mental health issues. And ironically, all those diets just left me as fat as ever and sometimes fatter. It's mindset and execution. And I'm not alone. Studies have repeatedly shown that the majority of weight loss diets fail, and paradoxically are even associated with weight gain. Yes, because a lot of people with toxic ritualistic behavior go into those studies. They need to separate people that have those issues out of the study. You might get vastly different results. It's kind of funny how that works, huh? Here with this inquisitive stranger, I run up against the exhausting and faulty logic that seems to follow me everywhere. Okay? It comes not just from strangers at parties, but from commenters online. Strangers on the street. Sorry, I just have to roll my eyes at this because commenters online, we all know they say horrible stuff all the time. They can say wonderful things too, but it's a lot. It's a lot of good and a lot of bad. So it's just kind of cringe a little bit to bring it up in this case. Strangers on the street, healthcare providers, coworkers, even friends and family. This is the most important. Friends and family. That's what people care about the most. Oops. Whoa. I don't know what I just did. Okay. Gosh. Look at me clicking on one of those links. Anyways. As a fat person, just lose weight is everywhere I turn. Just lose weight, as if the 10 pounds they shed for their New Year's resolution abided by the same laws as the 220-pound weight loss mandated for me by the body mass index. Yeah, she's super morbidly obese, you guys. I understand it's harder. It is harder. I would tell her, yeah, it's harder. It's going to take years. It's probably going to take you 3 or 4 years. It's hard, but it is possible. You got to go slow and steady. You did not gain 200 pounds in 1 year. You're not going to lose it that fast either. Anyways, as if it was that simple to become the rare 1 in 608, according to analysis, very fat women who gets thin and stays that way. And as if treating me like a human being, an equal worthy of respect, was so unthinkably burdensome that instead I should spend the better part of a decade praying at the altar of a thinness that never came and that statistically might never come. Very dramatic. Very dramatic. I think Aubrey would be so surprised to find that even if she became thin, there would still be people who disrespected her. Wow. What a revelation. People are not always respectful. We need to be a little bit more realistic. That faulty logic is everywhere, and it is deeply resistant to new information, to facts, to the science of weight loss. It's resistant because you're clearly wrong. That's why. It relies on truisms, repeated so often they feel like facts. This is fat acceptance in a nutshell. This is projection. It's simple. Calories in, calories out. Burn more than you consume. It's not that simple. Within super morbid obesity, you have to consider your metabolism and your hormones because they're so messed up. So typically you do have to consider hormone health, primarily thyroid hormone. It's very important. It ignores the real life struggles of millions of fat Americans who, with all their devotion and resources aimed at weight loss, still can't manage to lose weight and keep it off. It ignores the simple fact that no diet or exercise program has been proven to be effective for widespread, sustainable, long-term weight loss for all people. So the issue with this for all people is because it does require some kind of work. Once you've gotten yourself to that state, especially super morbid obesity, it is a lot of work. It takes work. It takes dedication. It takes strategy, planning, compartmentalization, tenacity. It takes a lot. And a lot of people are not willing to develop those things. So that's true. Because I think what bothers me about people like Aubrey is they ignore the simple fact that free will is a thing. And there will always be people who do not want to put in the effort. But perhaps most infuriatingly, our faulty cultural logic of weight loss insulates its speaker from any accountability for their treatment of fat people. So I don't think that that's necessarily true. You can tell somebody, hey, I don't want to be treated like crap. You can have your own boundaries. This is what grown-ups do. This is what people do in the world, Aubrey. You have to have boundaries with people. It's just one of those things in life. Its whisper is a seductive one. You don't need to worry about how doctors, teachers, employers, the media treats fat people. They brought it on themselves. You aren't responsible for what they shove in their fat faces. If they could just muster a little willpower, they could have whatever they wanted. So what I will say is this is a bad mindset, and I do think some people do have this mindset. I do. It's not the greatest mindset. What I would say is that there's often bad diet advice or diet advice that does not take into account hunger, especially hunger within a super morbidly obese person's body, which is very strong. People do not understand how strong it is. So you have to consider hunger. You got to consider your own personal macronutrient balance that will enable you to stay within a slight caloric deficit. You have to consider those things. It has to be a little individual. We all have genetic differences. And when you're super morbidly obese, your body is spread so thin that any little deviance in your genetic code from the average person, it becomes magnified because your body is under so much stress. So if you are the type of person that does well with high carbs, you will only be able to lose weight with high carbs. The same if it's high fat or high protein or whatever. However your genetics are, you're going to have to personalize it to you to get out. And it may even change, which can be very frustrating. But I've had many times where I've had to change the macronutrient profile of my diet in order to continue. So weight loss should be dynamic, especially from super morbid obese. It has to be dynamic, strategic. You have to develop an awareness of seasons. The seasons affect you a lot from a super morbidly obese perspective. There are times of the year where it's easier for you to lose weight, times of the year where you're most likely to gain weight. As a SMO person, you're probably going to gain weight every winter, and you can probably lose weight every summer, and you got to strategize around it. And people don't consider it. I found as a morbidly obese person, it's almost shifted. It's almost switched. I'm having a harder time in the summer now. I may even have an easier time in the winter this year because it changes as you lose weight. So when you're this big, when you're 220 pounds overweight, which is what she said, when you are that big, throughout your weight loss, you can go through many different lives, body-wise, through that time, because it is so much and it will take such a long time that you will have many, many different seasons. You got to live your life as you do it. You got to do everything you got to do as you're doing it, because time is passing by and this is your life. So you cannot hold your breath and just wait until it's done. You got to live as you're doing it. And people don't like to hear these things. People don't say these things in culture, and that's not helpful. But people have to think about it differently because culturally we have a biggest loser mindset. That is very unhelpful to somebody that's super morbidly obese. It's extremely unhelpful. Okay, anyways. And in the meantime, countless fat people face poor treatment from overtly judgmental healthcare workers, bias in the criminal justice system, increased difficulty finding employment, and so much more. But those problems are too entrenched, too complex, so the logic comes up with its own response, devastatingly simple and equally ruthless. Just lose weight. Unfortunately, Just Lose Weight reveals more about the speaker than the fat person it's aimed at. Just Lose Weight reveals a naivete that borders on proud ignorance, a denial of what so much science tells us now. No. Sustainable weight loss, even from a big size, is possible. Period. And I know in Aubrey's mind, she'd think I was just some miracle, as if I didn't struggle with severe hypothyroidism in 2020, very, very deathly severe, as if I didn't struggle with severe mental health issues involving, stuff, toxic ritualistic behavior, very, very severely for basically not 15 years, for over 10 years, probably around 12 years. From 2009 to 2020, I struggled with it severely. I finally snapped out of it in 2020. Thank God. But she's going to tell me, oh, you're the exception. You're the exception, Alex. You're 1 in 608. You're the special one. It's easy for you. It isn't easy for me. It never was easy for me. I am a very typical person that struggled with this issue for many, many years. Very typical person. I'm not special. I'm not Clara Bow, as Taylor would say. I'm not Taylor Swift. I'm not Stevie Nicks. I'm not the special girly pop. I'm not the star. I'm a person. I'm a normal person who has been fat the vast majority of my life. I'm a normal person who struggled with identifying with my obesity, a normal person who struggled with the idea of this aspect changing for a long time. But I never accepted it. I never gave up. I searched for a way out, and I got it. And I'm going to talk about it because I don't want anybody to go through what I did. Because I hate how typical it is. It should be, I wish my experience was the rarest thing ever, but it's not. It should be rare. It should be, but it's becoming more and more common as time goes on, and it's horrifying, and it has to stop. So that's why I'm here. Anyways, let's continue. It reveals an arrogant and baseless expertise, the idea that any thin person knows every fat person's body than the fat people themselves. That's true. I agree with her there. And the belief that we must be too ignorant or dull for not have tried dieting. No, I believe she tried. I do. I really believe it. And it reveals an eager kind of condescension, the tossed off just, often followed by the casual, "Have you heard of keto? Or did you ever try paleo?" As if almost every fat person doesn't already have an unwanted, unwilling expertise in every diet. As if it had never occurred to us that life might be easier as a thin person. As if we could only have gotten this fat through sheer ignorance. I'm so sorry, Aubrey. I'm so sorry. Because I know what she's talking about here. I've lived this life. I have. And unfortunately for me, I was not following keto or paleo or any of these things in a healthful way. I was following them through toxic ritualistic behavior and cycles. And so it wasn't just keto. It was something else. It wasn't just paleo. It was something else. You know? And I would bet that it was the same for her. And that kills me. It does. It's very sad. Just lose weight often falls back on surgery. If dieting doesn't work, why don't you just get a lap band? As if $14,000 plus the cost of any follow-up procedures, not to mention any missed days at work, as a caretaker or parent or more, were laying in my bank account, and as if thinness were my raison d'être. I don't know how to say that. I'm not French or whatever. I'm sorry. What I will say is surgery is an option. It's not my first option. I always consider it a last resort. In my opinion, it should be a last resort. But it is a resort. And I don't think people should be judged for it. I don't agree with that whatsoever. Okay. As if weight loss surgery were a simple tossed-off decision easily made when staring down the barrel of the possibility of looking like me for forever. Well, surgery alone isn't going to do it for you. You still have to put in effort. You still have to make the changes. You still have to stop. You have to stop eating so much. You still have to. As if surgery didn't have health risks of its own. Yes, but so does staying super morbidly obese. That also has health risks. As if it's a risk-free decision to be made easily and freely by anyone smart enough to consider their own health. Well, it's not a light decision to stay that fat either. And I know it isn't, Aubrey. I know it isn't. It's awful. Ultimately, the logic of just lose weight is infuriatingly self-preserving. It shields its speaker from any accountability at all, from any self-reflection or growth. No, it's just that people don't think about it. That's all. They don't think about it that deeply. It's not their experience. Your experience is not at the top of their mind, Aubrey. That's all. It's not personal. And it foists the blame for anti-fatness back on fat people in spite of overwhelming evidence that many of us cannot just lose weight. People are so much more accepting now, Aubrey. When you're working on it, people give you years of time with grace these days. Society has progressed in some ways where people can accept that you're not losing weight 200 pounds in a year. People can accept that. There is some progress. If you were just slowly making progress, the vast majority of people would accept it. What they can't accept is you lying about it, saying it has nothing to do with health, saying it's a good thing, trying to make it a political group, trying to do all these weird things. No, people cannot stand for that, and I won't stand for it. That logic, ubiquitous and ruthless, sets the expectation that fat people like me must embark on a painful, never-ending quest for simple personhood. You are still a person when you're fat. You're always a person. Always. Always, always, always. That is a toxic mindset to have. Very toxic. It is not never-ending. It's not fast. When you're super morbidly obese, it isn't fast, but it is not never-ending. It is painful, but once again, when you are super morbidly obese, it will be painful if you stay that way, and it is painful to lose it. So you got to pick your pain. What do you want to do? What do you want to do, Aubrey? I'm at least going to pick the pain where I'm going to have less pain down the line rather than more. That's what I did. Guess what? I have less pain now. But I still have pain from being morbidly obese. It still sucks, but it sucks a hell of a lot less than it used to. It mandates that we endlessly self-flagellate, making a performance of our penance for all to see. No, you don't have to. You do not have to do this. That is wrong. You do not have to. No. After all, if we're going to stay fat, the least we can do is remind thinner people of our inferiority. No, that's a toxic mindset. We got another one. Toxic. Toxic, toxic, toxic. No. No. Your weight has no bearing on if you're superior, inferior, nothing. Your weight is just a physical thing that can affect your health if it's too far out of the bounds of normal. That's just a fact. Stop putting so much emotion into it. Stop. It is just a physical attribute that can affect your health when it gets too extreme, either too high or too low. That's all. It's not your worth. There's no spiritual significance to your weight. There should be no emotional significance to your weight. It is just facts. No. No. And again, if you're at a place where you're healthy, then it can have to do with certain fitness goals or aesthetics or something. But that's a totally different conversation that I'm not going to get into on this channel until I'm there, probably in a minute, a long time. Then I'll probably talk about that stuff later. But I'm still like, ooh, it'd be really nice to be able to breathe freely. That's where I'm at right now. It's like I can't even think about that right now. I don't even think about it. We'll get to that later. Stick around, you guys. Just Lose Weight is a magic trick. Its pledge, in turn, lay the foundation for the prestige, absolving thinner people for any sense of shared responsibility to confront their own beliefs about the worthlessness of fat bodies. Now, I think your weird political ideology is a way of absolving yourself from the responsibility of the condition your body is in. That's what I think it is. I think you're projecting here because you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to deal with the fact that you damaged your body so much that you're going to have to put a lot of time and effort to get out of that situation. So it's easier to just externalize it and blame it on everyone else. But it's never going to get you a solution. If you do that, you'll never feel better. You're not going to feel better. You're always going to feel horrible. Oh my gosh. And to bring an end to the discriminatory actions and systems that flow from those beliefs. And even if you did, you still would feel horrible because fat is carried with you all the time. At that party, I told a stranger about systems that exclude and oppress fat people. And like so many thin people before him, he responded with the commonplace non sequitur that bypassed everything I'd said. If it's so bad, just lose weight. People typically don't like complainers. I know that because I complain a lot. And people don't like me. I'm just kidding. Kidding, but not. So oftentimes when people say that, people typically will just shout out an easy solution to an issue or whatever. And that can be frustrating for the ruminating types like me and Aubrey. It can be a little frustrating, but at the same time, sometimes there's simplicity to it. There's truth in simplicity. And that really is the solution. When I fit on the plane, what do you know? Just losing weight, it was the solution. It worked. Sometimes the simple explanation is the truth. But weight loss is rarely as simple as just that. It doesn't imply that it's simple. It just implies to get it done, regardless of how long it takes. If it were, we wouldn't have a 72 billion diet industry, endless surgeries, and ever-expanding array of failing diet products billing themselves as miracle cures. If weight loss were as simple as just 70% of Americans wouldn't have higher than recommended BMIs, our bodies chalked up to failures of our individual character, not natural extensions of the environs and culture in which we exist, because no matter what, Aubrey, no matter what, free will exists and choice exists, and I want to live in a world where we have choices, where we have free will. I don't want to live in a big prison where we're all forced to only eat calories that are required for base survival. I don't want that life. So I will always argue for you to choose to do the right thing, because if we have choices and freedom in life, then some people will choose to do the wrong things. No matter what. No matter what. Fast food is incredibly expensive now, and there are still people that go. There are still poor people that go every day. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Freedom of choice is always going to be a factor. Culture is always going to matter more in this area. Culture and individual choice. That's how you change this issue. People don't get that. Aubrey doesn't get it. And you see how much of a failure this mindset is. Do you see how she hasn't lost? And you see how my perspective of culture and individual choice, it has worked. You see the difference in the mindset, and you see the difference in the result. If I waited around for the world to be perfect so I didn't have to be fat anymore, I probably would be dead. Like I said, I really was bad health-wise. I didn't wait for that. I wanted to live. Aubrey, she's chugging along. She's chugging along. Maybe she'll get there. Maybe she won't. But she literally talks about how miserable she is all the time. That's literally her job. So I guess maybe her body will chug along. Her body can handle the obesity. She'll chug along and be miserable her whole life. I don't want to do that. And I would never advocate for that. Anyways, and if weight loss were as simple as just, thinner people could comfortably judge those who look like me, treat us with open disdain, and not have to worry about the complex and inconvenient stories of our bodies and the abuse they bring. But just is so much simpler for people who have never worn plus sizes, never tried. Well, what are you going to say to me, Aubrey? What you want to say? What about all the people who did wear plus sizes and now don't? What about them? Never tried to seek care from a doctor who refused to touch them. Never felt a stranger's hand tugging at their clothing, pulling down a shirt that dared to expose even a half inch of soft fat. This probably happened to her one time in like 1996. And she's still holding on to it. Toxic, Aubrey. Toxic. Just is seductive, tempting, and comforting. Just is a seductive, tempting, and comforting reminder of the supremacy of thinner bodies. Oh my gosh, toxic mindset. and a simple way to brush off the more complex and troubling experiences of those of us who haven't had the relative luxury of thinness. Toxic mindset. Wow. She really was in her toxic ritualistic behavior during this time. I can tell through this article. Just is easier for so many people, just like that man at the party. We stay with just, no matter how wrong or harmful it may be. Wow. And your stuff is not harmful at all. And it's not wrong at all. Gosh. Wow, that was a lot. That was a lot. She gets really better in this one. That was crazy. But let me know what you guys think. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys commenting. I read everything always. Thank you guys so much. I will see you guys again soon. Have a good rest of your day, night, whatever. Peace. Bye.